Welcome to Health and Wellness, where we offer integrated solutions for personal and financial retirement planning for medical professionals. I'm your host, Michael Swartz. Welcome back to the second episode with Dr. Jennifer Shaer. We will be talking in this episode about the professional retirement transition, and so specifically retiring professionally and the final years of her career. So with that, Jennifer, welcome back.
Oh, so good to be here again, Michael.
Thank you. And so, as we mentioned, we're going to be talking about the retiring professionally. We touched on it in our last conversation, but again, if you want to remind the listeners kind of what your professional plan is between now and the day that you formally retire.
So, my professional plan is to keep working as a pediatrician and chief wellness officer and physician coach as I fade off into retirement.
I like that language. You mentioned fade off. Is there some steps that you'll be taking? Is it a bit of a metered approach? What does that transition look like for you?
Yeah, for sure, there'll be steps for me. I will phase out of direct patient care and continue my work as a in the wellness space, whether it's one-on-one physician work or for a healthcare organization or as a change agent. I don't know exactly what that will look like, but I will stay in the healthcare space for a bit before I fully retire.
Excellent. And I'm wondering, could we talk a bit more about that direct patient care piece of your career in pediatrics? Just tell me a bit more about you mentioned in the first
Yeah.
episode too, it wasn't about being a doctor. It was about the science and the biology, but then once you got into practice,
Hmm.
the pediatrics piece and what drew you into that and what's so meaningful about it and how that impacts your retiring transition.
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you. I will just say for any of your doctors listening out there that hands down, pediatrics is the best specialty. I mean, there's nothing better than a child's smile. Okay. And just it's almost a buffer to burnout because granted, there are plenty of pediatricians who are burned out, but when you're focusing on your product and your product is that sweet innocent child, it really, really is easy to be that buffer that gives you that lift to that really helps you realize that what you're doing is meaningful.
Well, yeah, and for you to say that kind of, I heard carried you through your career. It was that
Hmm.
really strong source where you could always go back to and there was something there for you. And as you transition out of that direct patient care, what void is that going to create and what plan do you have to offset what you're losing?
Yeah. It's going to be a huge void. And I've been thinking about stopping direct patient care for years. So it's peeling off a Band-Aid very slowly. Um, because I do love what I do. And I know that there are other things I want to do before I fully retire, and I can't keep doing everything and adding and adding and adding. Um, and I want to be able to replace what I'm losing with some other connections. I know I'll say sometimes I get so stressed out at work that I feel like I'm just going to quit it all and just retire now. And I keep reminding myself of times where, I'll take a vacation and 3 days in, I see that that beach behind you and you're thinking, I'm like 3 days in, I'm like, I just cannot look at, I love the beach and the ocean, but I just cannot stop, sit and stare at this and have no purposeful work or purposeful after a certain amount of time. So I don't want to completely let the pendulum fly the other way. I do want to bring the meaningful connections into something else that I'm doing. I haven't 100% figured out, um, but I do have some ideas.
Yeah, and you've shared those, at least one of the ideas with me, because what brought us together was physician development coaching. And so could you share a little bit about your coaching and specifically for retiring and retired physicians, kind of what that mindset is and what you're working towards for
Yeah,
that?
sure. What I love about working with with physicians is that we have been working so hard and on autopilot for so long that we've almost forgotten what's truly in our hearts and what really makes us makes us tick and what we really want to be doing. Like I always say, like if money was not an issue, what would you do with your time? And where is your passion? And what is your, what is your joy? And you'd be shocked how many doctors don't know, can't even answer that question because it's layer upon layer of expectations and, roles and responsibilities. That's one of the reasons why I love being with children so much. They're so close to their true, they haven't lost their true nature yet. Over the years of seeing them, you start seeing that it does get buried. But peeling away those layers, for me, it's about slowing down so that you can peel those layers off and then picking your path and continuing to check in. Checking in. Is that what I want to do? Oh, I'm veering off. Checking in. How does it feel? Pivoting, moving, adjusting. It's just fun.
It is. And so you touched on several concepts that are written into the book, and one of them being kind of this callus that can develop over the course of the career, partially out of necessity, but partially just out of the way the career is designed. And you'd mentioned this, it's high school, then it's college, then it's post-secondary, MCAT or residency, right? And so you start
Yeah.
going into the structure, and then really the last decision that you made was peds versus OB.
Yeah.
And then that autopilot takes over for 3 to 4 decades.
Mm-hmm.
And along the way, you're probably adopting the vision and values of the healthcare systems that you work for. And we have it in the book is actually a visual of a spectrum, right? And there's adopting the values and vision of the healthcare system kind of as the most gentle of integrations between identity and career. But then there's
Mm-hmm.
the title of physician, which can create identity as well. But then kind of this rusted internal compass that you're talking about, where it can
Yeah.
go into dormancy phase because we're making these sacrifices throughout our career.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually could swing full spectrum to what's defined as corporate Stockholm syndrome, where for
Oof.
especially a lot of lower income hospital facilities, people are literally sacrificing not just their personal lives, but some form of financial life too. It feels like everything. They're all in, and to make that work and to be operating on, a 1/4% margin or at a loss, it can be like sacrificing and giving up everything that's internal and self-directed. And when you start doing that, 10, 15, 20, 25
Mm-hmm.
years, you get to the end of your career and there's not much else besides that. That I guess is kind of what you're describing here in your coaching and experience with
Yeah.
retiring and retired physicians. I guess what is how has that informed your transition?
Yeah. I love your phrase, corporate Stockholm syndrome. I've never heard that before. Love that.
Yeah. It's actually borrowed from a psychologist, so not my phrase, but certainly a
Yeah.
message that a lot of people might look at and go, "Is that me?" It's almost
Yeah.
a wake-up call. I don't want to call it an intervention, but something to certainly explore is how much
Yeah.
have you given up for your career and sacrificed from that internal
Mm-hmm.
compass that you're describing?
Listen, I have been so blessed throughout my career because I've been able to protect myself from that, but I see it in my colleagues all the time. And part of for me where has come from is my dad giving me the inner compass and when you go to bed at night make sure that you can sleep with a clear conscience and that you're doing, and the fact that I have a husband who has been such a foundation for me that when I've had questions about the career path that I'm on, I have made bold changes that most doctors don't do because I was feeling that need to make a change and do something different because he had a solid income that gave me the flexibility and um, without that, I don't know that I would have been able to live the life and taken the path that I've taken.
Well, when we look back at that career and some of those major transitions and milestones, I guess first having even the awareness and the reverence for that ability is very
Hmm.
meaningful. So I just want to acknowledge that. And you mentioned this too, the greatest milestones of your career, you touched on continuous reinvention. That jumped out and off the
Yes,
page. Is that part of it? Was there more? I guess,
100%.
okay.
I'm constantly, I think I'm sort of in the healthcare field, what you'd call a serial entrepreneur. Constantly, I see a need. I within my company, started a foundation, within my practice, started a nutrition program, started a the breastfeeding program, all the different things that when I see a need, I just start it. My problem is um, I'm not a maintenance person. I need to transfer it over to the maintenance people. Otherwise,
More wonderful self-awareness from a great coaching client. I will say that. Like you're both a coach and a phenomenal coachee and that introspective nature. Hey, I'm not a maintenance person, but I am that entrepreneur
yeah.
and taking that on. I love that. And so, the professional bucket list, I guess now that we've kind of taken a look back at those milestones, we want to look out and say before you're done with
Hmm.
practice and done with
Yeah.
the chief wellness officer role, what's that exclamation part? What's that legacy professional bucket list
Yeah.
item that you'd like to share that
Yeah.
you'll be including in
I
your career?
I actually have, well, I have two things. One is that I want to make sure that I leave my current place in good shape, because I do sometimes leave initiatives before they're fully, a couple of them died when I left because I wasn't able to transition them to maintenance mode. I want to make sure that we have a good succession plan because my practice is too great to go down the toilet after I leave. But I have one more sort of area of love and interest that I want to explore before I fully retire, and that is related to it's similar to coaching, but it's mind body medicine and well-being and the impact that a dysregulated mind body connection that can cause on your physical health. And I want to do this outside of the traditional healthcare system because the typical fee for service and payment stuff, it's really not doable. So I want to find some sort of whether it's a startup company or at a Canyon Ranch resort or somewhere where they're doing that type of work with people and it's a holistic, helping people to flourish holistically. Um, Yeah, I think that's my last to do before I fully go off into the sunset.
Awesome. And so to have, the resources of the healthcare system or the private practice that you're working for while you're still in your career and kind of leveraging that to leave on a good note, like you mentioned, going to bed with a
Yeah,
clean conscience, hey, to make this truly meaningful and
yeah.
to give back with my career, that initiative is something that reigns in your heart. It sounds like it rings a bell there.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
so for you, it sounds like, I guess, talk a little bit about your mind-body connection, how you've kind of retained access to your heart without building the calluses over the course of your career. What does that look like, and how
hmm.
meaningful was that? And what do you see with coaching clients that makes it more difficult for
Yeah.
those who weren't able to do that?
Well, it's not easy in healthcare to keep your heart vulnerable because there's so much that comes at you on a daily basis. So you don't want to have that compassion fatigue where it just wears you down. And healthcare is I say it's such a perfect storm for burnout and all of this because you have these giving, caring, loving people who go into healthcare, and then you have a system that is just unforgiving and take, take, take. It really is a perfect storm. So what have I done? I mean, I have really done a lot of it's taken a lot of time and work to really like peel back my layers and be willing to be vulnerable and feel and sometimes cry and figure out when I feel dread doing
Hmm.
something, to me, of course, I'll have a glass of wine and watch Netflix and numb myself out every now and then. But to me, it's a symptom of something. And what is it trying to tell me? And journaling and thinking and making space to think about my life instead of just working in my life.
Yeah, and so it sounds like you're talking about a self-awareness, maybe a meditative practice. And
Yeah.
and it brings up this book, Permission to Feel. And it really calls to mind that emotions are information too.
Yes.
In the healthcare field specifically, you mentioned the perfect storm of burnout. It sometimes just out of necessity is put up and shut up and get on to the next room.
Yes.
One of the most powerful stories that I heard on that topic too was an ER physician who saved a child from choking and was literally leaving the room as one of the APCs stopped him and just said, Where are you going? And they said, well, I'm on to the next patient. We got this one taken care of. They're stable. I'm moving on. And it was a APC who was also a coach. And they said, what if you just took 5 or 15 seconds
Yeah.
to reflect on the fact that that child has a life again? Like they're not
Yeah.
going to pass away. Those parents don't
Right.
need to grieve the loss of their child.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a shift in the room where just that 15-second moment of pause and reflection for the reality that
Yep.
oftentimes just gets swept aside. And so
Yes.
it's that conscious piece that you mentioned about. It's been hard work to give myself permission to use
Yeah.
the information from my emotions, but to let those emotions also be present because it can be swept aside for the sake of
And
the career.
that processing of those emotions, it doesn't, sometimes there's not time to process right then and there, and you can kind of put them aside, but you owe it to yourself to carve out time to process them at some point. It can be later, but if you don't, then they build up, and that's where all the epigenetics and the, all of the disaster that's going to be of your health in the future if you don't.
Yeah, and the metaphor, I think as you know from coaching, I love metaphors. The metaphor here is kind of the storage room in the house, where over time, a box gets put away, and then it's
Yeah,
trinket, and then it's an item, and then starts to kind of snowball. And all of a sudden, you can't get the door open because the
right.
boxes have tipped over, and you're just chucking a blanket on top of everything else. We need to open that door and let that room clean out.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, waiting until retirement it leaves you one more thing to do. And sometimes that can add to the overwhelming nature of this transition. So for you to kind of keep the window
Yeah.
cracked in that room, to peer in from time to time, let the
Right.
air cycle through and kind of keep a very clean back
Yeah.
room.
Well, to your point though, also about kind of the fear that comes with retirement. As exciting as it is, look, if I had all the money in the world, would I retire tomorrow? I still would be scared because of all of the changes, right? There's a part of me that's intentionally, I keep telling myself, I'm choosing the status quo for now. I'm choosing the status quo for now intentionally because I have other life changes happening. And to send my last kid off to college and to become an empty nester and to stop working and lose my connections at work, it just would be, it would send me into a spiral that would not be good for my well-being.
No, and nor anyone else's for that matter, Jennifer. And so once again, you are calling out the very specific problems that many physicians are going to face as they transition into retirement. And so I think that's also excellent forecasting for next week's conversation, which is retiring personally. And so we're going to go a bit deeper. We're going to focus more on that internal drive, excuse me, identity, purpose, and values, and how
Mm,
those are really driving your retirement transition as well. And so
yeah,
we'll transition or we'll switch over to speaking about retiring professionally in our next conversation. And as
perfect.
we as we close up here professionally, it sounds like you've got some wonderful milestones that you've reflected on, wonderful gratitude for your husband giving you that opportunity to step away for a period of time and really find your nonlinear path through a
Mhm.
career in healthcare. And then you've got that closure and some of those big major projects to put an exclamation point on your career. I just want to
Yeah.
celebrate that and say it's going to be inspirational for those who maybe haven't done so much work or haven't had the ability or time to keep their hearts open on their journey and create that meaningful closure for their career and really forecast what the final years of their career look like. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for allowing me the space to share.
You're very welcome. We'll be back for the third part of our three-part interview shortly.
Terrific.
That concludes our interview with Dr. Jennifer Shaer, a Chief Wellness Officer and Pediatric Specialist at Allied Physicians Group. If you would like to learn more about her coaching practice, you can find her at shaercoaching.com. That's www.shaercoaching.com. Thank you for listening to this episode of Health and Wellness. As always, I'm your host, Michael Swartz, certified financial planner and healthcare peer coaching practitioner. If you're looking for more help or additional resources on your retirement journey, please visit healthwellness.com or send an email to hello@healthwellness.com. We'll see you in the next episode.